A 30-year-old billionaire watched her empire crumble in real time from the back of a stranger's car. $38 million evaporating, investors gone, her company bleeding out. And the only person who saw it coming was the man driving her home, a rideshare driver she'd barely looked at twice. What he told her in those next 15 minutes would either save everything she'd built or destroy what little remained. This is a story about power, betrayal, and the dangerous cost of underestimating the wrong person. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The notification arrived at 4:47 p.m., and Serena Vale's world tilted sideways. She was standing in the marble lobby of the Kinsley Tower, her phone vibrating in her hand with the kind of insistence that meant something had gone catastrophically wrong. The screen lit up with a single line from her operations director. Cold chain failure. Shipment 4. A. Compromised. Call immediately. Serena didn't call immediately. She stood there for 3 seconds, long enough for the lobby's ambient music to cycle through another cheerful loop, long enough for 2 executives to walk past her without making eye contact, and felt the floor drop out from under her carefully constructed day. She was supposed to be celebrating. The meeting with Garrison Capital had gone well. 45 minutes of confident answers, projected growth charts that curved upward like promises, and Martin Garrison himself nodding along with that particular brand of restrained enthusiasm that meant money was about to change hands. $38 million. The kind of investment that would triple her cold storage infrastructure, expand operations into 4 new states, and cement Valecore Logistics as the dominant player in pharmaceutical transport. The kind of deal that would prove, once and for all, that she wasn't just lucky, that she hadn't just inherited the right connections at the right time, that she'd earned every dollar of the fortune she'd built before turning 31. Now her phone was vibrating again, and the marble floor felt less solid than it had 5 seconds ago. Serena stepped outside into the October heat, the kind of thick, wet warmth that made the air feel like it was pressing against her skin. She dialed Marcus Chen, her operations director, and he picked up before the first ring finished. "Tell me it's fixable," she said. "It's not fixable." Marcus's voice had the flat quality of someone delivering news they'd already processed. Shipment 4A was carrying 14,000 units of the Merrick vaccine. Temperature spiked to 41 degrees for 90 minutes. The whole batch is compromised. Serena closed her eyes. 14,000 units. The Merrick pharmaceutical contract was their flagship account, the one she'd used as proof of concept in every investor pitch for the last 6 months. Losing it would be bad. Losing it the same week Garrison Capital was finalizing their investment would be catastrophic. How did it happen? We don't know yet. The sensors should have flagged it immediately, but the system didn't register anything until the shipment reached the Phoenix checkpoint. By then, the damage was done. Who's accountable? That's the problem. The logs show normal operation. No alerts, no failures, no gaps. It's like the system just didn't see it. Serena opened her eyes and stared at the street in front of her, watching a rideshare car pull up to the curb. A silver sedan, slightly dented on the passenger side. The driver leaned over to check the phone mounted on his dashboard. "Get Derek on this," Serena said. Derek Sloan, her CFO, had a particular talent for managing disasters before they became public relations nightmares. "I want a full audit by morning, and Marcus, don't tell anyone else yet, not until we know what we're dealing with." "Understood." She ended the call and stood there for another moment, watching the rideshare driver wait patiently at the curb. She'd ordered the car 15 minutes ago, back when her biggest problem had been choosing between celebrating with her team or going home to review tomorrow's presentation. Now she just wanted to get somewhere quiet where she could think. The driver glanced up as she approached. Mid-30s, maybe. Dark hair that needed a trim, a face that didn't give much away. He was wearing a faded blue shirt and looked like someone who'd logged enough hours behind the wheel to stop caring about making conversation. "Serena?" he asked. "That's me." She climbed into the back seat and pulled the door shut, shutting out the heat and the noise and the world that was currently trying very hard to unravel. The car smelled faintly of coffee and something citrus, air freshener probably, the kind that came in cheap plastic trees. The driver pulled away from the curb without asking for confirmation of the destination. She appreciated that. Some drivers treated every ride like an opportunity for small talk, as if sitting in traffic together created some kind of temporary friendship. This one just drove. Serena pulled out her laptop and opened the operations dashboard, scrolling through the same data Marcus had already reviewed. Shipment 4A, route Phoenix to Denver. Temperature log showing a flat 72 degrees from departure until arrival. Exactly what it should have been. No anomalies, no failures. Except the actual cargo had been cooked at 41 degrees for 90 minutes. She stared at the screen, looking for something, anything, that would explain the gap between what the system recorded and what had actually happened. The numbers didn't lie, but they also didn't make sense. Rough day? She looked up. The driver was watching her in the rearview mirror, his eyes flicking between the road and her reflection. Something like that, Serena said, keeping her voice neutral. She didn't owe him an explanation, and she wasn't in the mood to pretend her problems were suitable for casual conversation. I don't mean to pry, he said, but you've been staring at that screen like it just insulted your mother. Serena almost smiled despite herself. It might as well have. The driver nodded and merged onto the highway, his hand steady on the wheel. They drove in silence for another few minutes, the city sliding past in a blur of glass and concrete and late afternoon shadows. You work in logistics? He asked eventually. She glanced up again. Why do you ask? The dashboard. I caught a glimpse when you opened it. Looks like a supply chain interface. Serena closed the laptop. You know supply chain interfaces? Used to work in freight before this. Nothing fancy. Just local deliveries, routing optimization, that kind of thing. You start to recognize the patterns. And now you drive for rideshare. And now I drive for rideshare, he agreed. There was no bitterness in his voice, just a statement of fact. Serena leaned back against the seat and watched the traffic crawl past. She should have been irritated by the conversation, by the intrusion into her carefully guarded space. Instead, she found herself curious. What made you switch? She asked. Hours, he said simply. Freight work doesn't care if you have a kid who needs to be picked up at 6. Rideshare lets me set my own schedule. That's practical. That's survival. They fell silent again, and Serena reopened her laptop. The data was still there, still wrong, still impossible to reconcile. She pulled up the sensor logs and cross-referenced them with the GPS tracking, looking for any discrepancy that might explain how 14,000 vaccine units could spoil while the system reported perfect conditions. Can I ask what you're looking for? She didn't look up this time. A mistake? Whose? Anyone's. The system's. A technician's. Mine. She scrolled through another screen of data. I don't care who made it. I just need to find it before tomorrow morning. Why tomorrow morning? Because that's when my investors are going to ask why I just lost a $38 million contract. The driver was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, like he was testing the weight of each word before letting it out. Can I see? Serena looked up sharply. See what? The dashboard, just for a second. She stared at him in the rearview mirror. You're joking. I'm not. He signaled and changed lanes, smooth and deliberate. Look, I get it. You don't know me. I'm just the guy driving your car. But I spent 6 years routing cold chain shipments for a medical distributor. And if there's a pattern in that data, I might be able to spot it. No promises. But what's the harm? Serena's first instinct was to say no. This was proprietary information, company data, the kind of thing you didn't hand over to a stranger in a rideshare car just because he claimed to have experience. Her second instinct was to consider that she was currently staring at a problem that made no sense, with less than 16 hours to solve it, and pride wasn't going to pay the bills if Garrison Capital walked away. Pull over, she said. What? Pull over. If you're going to look at this, you're not doing it while you're driving. The driver glanced at her in the mirror, then nodded. He took the next exit and pulled into the parking lot of a half-empty strip mall, sliding into a space near the back where the asphalt was cracked and weeds pushed through the gaps. He turned off the engine and twisted around in his seat. Okay, show me. Serena hesitated for one more second, then turned the laptop so he could see the screen. Shipment 4A. Left Phoenix at 6:15 a.m., arrived Denver at 3:30 p.m. Temperature should have stayed at 72 degrees the entire route. The sensors say it did. But when they opened the cargo, everything was spoiled. temperature exposure consistent with 41 degrees for at least 90 minutes. The driver leaned closer, his eyes scanning the data with the kind of focus that made her think he actually knew what he was looking at. "What's your sensor interval?" he asked. "Every 30 seconds, continuous monitoring with redundant backups." "And the GPS tracking?" "Same interval. We cross-reference location and temperature to catch any anomalies." He scrolled through the logs, his finger tracing lines of data that all said the same thing. Everything normal, nothing wrong, perfect conditions from start to finish. "This doesn't make sense," he said finally. "That's the problem." "No, I mean it really doesn't make sense." He tapped the screen. "Look at the timestamps. Every 30 seconds, like you said. But the GPS data, there's a gap." Serena leaned forward. "What gap?" "Right here. Between 9:23 and 9:30. 7 minutes where the GPS shows the truck in the exact same position. Not moving, not idling, just frozen." She looked at where he was pointing. He was right. The truck's location didn't update for 7 minutes, then resumed as if nothing had happened. "That could just be a dead zone," she said. "Happens sometimes in rural areas. Except your temperature sensors kept logging data during that same period, and they're on the same telemetry system, right? Same connection?" Serena felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Yes, same system." "Then why did one data stream freeze while the other kept running?" She stared at the screen, her mind racing through possibilities. Equipment failure, software glitch, network interference. None of them explained why the GPS would stop while the temperature sensors continued transmitting. "Show me the other shipments," the driver said. "From the last month, same routes." Serena pulled up the archived data and filtered for Phoenix-Denver runs. 12 shipments over the past 4 weeks, all using the same route, same trucks, same protocols. She spread them across the screen in a grid. The driver studied them in silence, his eyes moving from one data set to the next. Then he pointed. "There, and there, and there." Serena looked. 3 other shipments spread across different weeks. Each one had the same anomaly, a 7-minute gap where the GPS froze while the temperature sensors kept reporting. "That's not a coincidence," the driver said quietly. "No," Serena agreed. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "It's not." They sat in silence for a moment, the strip mall parking lot stretching out around them like a stage set for a conversation that was rapidly becoming more complicated than either of them had anticipated. "What's your name?" Serena asked. "Ethan. Ethan Rowe." "Ethan." She closed the laptop and looked at him directly. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay? Are you actually seeing a pattern here, or are you just good at making guesses?" Ethan met her eyes without flinching. "I'm seeing a pattern. I don't know what it means yet, but it's there. Someone's manipulating your data during those 7-minute windows. The question is why?" Serena felt her pulse quicken. To hide temperature failures. Maybe, or to cause them. The implication hung in the air between them, heavy and impossible to ignore. If someone was deliberately causing shipments to fail, sabotaging the cargo, destroying product, undermining the company, then this wasn't just a technical problem. It was something much worse. "I need to get back to the office," Serena said. "Now." Ethan started the car without another word and pulled out of the parking lot, heading back toward the highway. Serena's phone buzzed with another message from Marcus, then one from Derek, then 3 more from department heads who'd apparently been pulled into emergency meetings she hadn't authorized. The news was spreading. The damage was already in motion. She looked up and caught Ethan watching her in the rearview mirror again. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For looking, for noticing." She paused. "For not thinking I was crazy for asking." Ethan shrugged. "You didn't seem crazy, just desperate. I know what that looks like." They drove the rest of the way in silence, the city lights beginning to glow as the sun dipped below the horizon. When they pulled up in front of Vailcor's headquarters, a sleek glass building that reflected the sky like a promise, Serena gathered her laptop and reached for the door handle. Then she stopped. "What's your schedule like tomorrow?" she asked. Ethan glanced back at her. "Why?" "Because I think I'm going to need someone who actually knows what they're looking at. And right now, you're the only person who's found anything useful." "I drive rideshare for a living," Ethan said. "I'm not a consultant." "You were 15 minutes ago." Serena pulled out her phone and opened a new contact. "What's your number?" Ethan rattled it off, and she saved it under his name. "I'll call you in this morning," she said. "If you're interested." "Interested in what?" "Keeping me from losing everything." She got out of the car before he could respond, walking toward the building's entrance with her laptop tucked under one arm and her phone already buzzing with the next crisis. Behind her, she heard Ethan's car pull away from the curb, merging back into traffic like he'd never been there at all. But he had been there. And he'd seen something no one else had noticed. Serena pushed through the glass doors and headed for the elevators, her mind already running through the next 12 hours. She needed Derek to audit the sensor systems. She needed Marcus to pull every shipment log from the last 6 months. She needed to figure out who had access to the data streams and why someone would want to destroy her company from the inside. Most of all, she needed to do it before Garrison Capital's follow-up call at 9 a.m. tomorrow. The elevator doors opened and she stepped inside, pressing the button for the executive floor. As the doors slid shut, she caught her reflection in the polished steel, 30 years old, running a company worth hundreds of millions, and suddenly very aware of how much she didn't know. The elevator climbed and Serena pulled out her phone to text Marcus. "Emergency meeting, my office, 1 hour, bring Derek and the full ops team." She hesitated, then added one more line. "And don't tell anyone what we're looking for yet. Not until we know who to trust." The response came back immediately. "Understood." The elevator reached the top floor, and the doors opened onto a corridor lined with floor-to-ceiling windows. Serena walked toward her office, her footsteps echoing against the polished floor, and tried to push down the growing certainty that whatever was happening to her company wasn't an accident. Someone was doing this, deliberately, carefully, and they'd been doing it for weeks. She reached her office and closed the door behind her, shutting out the corridor and the city and the world that was currently trying very hard to pull her under. Then she sat down at her desk, opened her laptop, and started building a list of everyone who had access to the systems Ethan had flagged. The list was longer than she wanted it to be. By the time Marcus arrived with Derek and the rest of the operations team, Serena had narrowed it down to 47 people who could theoretically manipulate the data streams. IT administrators, logistics coordinators, senior engineers, department heads, people she'd hired personally, people she'd trusted with her company's infrastructure, people who might be sabotaging her. Marcus knocked once and entered without waiting for an invitation, followed by Derek and 3 other department leads. They filed into her office and arranged themselves around the conference table like generals preparing for war. "Tell me you found something," Derek said. He was in his mid-40s, sharp-featured and sharper dressed, the kind of man who treated every conversation like a negotiation he intended to win. "I found a pattern," Serena said. She turned her laptop around and walked them through the same data Ethan had analyzed an hour earlier, the 7-minute GPS gaps, the continued temperature logging, the correlation with shipment failures. Derek frowned. "This could still be a technical glitch." "It's not," Serena said flatly. "It's happening on a precise interval, targeting specific shipments and leaving no trace in the primary logs. That's not a glitch. That's deliberate." Marcus leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the screen. If someone's manipulating the data, they'd need access to both the GPS and sensor systems. That's a pretty short list. 47 people, Serena said. "I already pulled it." 47? Derek's frown deepened. "That's half the technical staff." "I know. So what's the plan? Interrogate everyone? Shut down operations while we run an internal investigation? Because I guarantee you Garrison Capital will walk the second they hear we're dealing with potential sabotage." Serena met his eyes. "Then we don't tell them. Not yet." "That's a hell of a gamble." "Everything's a gamble right now, Derek. The only question is whether we control the narrative or let it control us." Derek sat back, his expression unreadable. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to audit every financial transaction related to the failed shipments. Insurance claims, vendor payments, routing contracts. If someone's profiting from this, there'll be a trail. And if there's not, then we keep looking until we find one." Marcus cleared his throat. "What about the investor call tomorrow? Garrison's going to want an explanation for the Merrick contract loss." Serena closed her laptop. "We tell them the truth, that we identified a systems vulnerability and we're addressing it. We don't mention sabotage. We don't mention internal investigations. We present it as a technical challenge we're solving, not a crisis we're drowning in." That's going to be a tough sell, Marcus said. I didn't build this company by making easy sells. The room fell silent. One by one, the department heads nodded and stood to leave, each of them carrying assignments that would keep them working through the night. Derek lingered for a moment, his hand resting on the back of his chair. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "No," Serena admitted, "but I'm out of better options." Derek nodded and left without another word, pulling the door closed behind him. Serena sat alone in her office, staring at the city lights stretching out beyond her windows. Somewhere out there, Ethan Rowe was probably finishing his shift, picking up strangers and driving them to destinations that didn't matter, completely unaware that he'd just become the most important person in her entire operation. She picked up her phone and pulled up his contact information, her thumb hovering over the call button. Then she put the phone down and went back to the data. There would be time to call him tomorrow. Right now she had a company to save, and 16 hours to figure out who was trying to destroy it. The call to Ethan came at 6:47 a.m., before the sun had fully cleared the horizon and while the city was still shaking off sleep. Serena hadn't slept at all. She'd spent the night in her office, combing through financial records and system logs until her eyes burned and the coffee had gone cold in its fourth cup. Derek's preliminary audit had come back at 3 a.m. with nothing useful, just routine transactions, standard operating procedures, everything exactly where it should be, which meant whoever was doing this knew how to cover their tracks. Ethan answered on the third ring, his voice rough with sleep. "Yeah? It's Serena Vale. From yesterday." There was a pause, then the sound of movement. "I remember. What time is it?" "Early. I need you to come to my office." "Now?" "As soon as you can get here." Another pause. She could hear him breathing, working through the logistics of whatever morning routine she'd just interrupted. "I have to drop my daughter at school by 8, he said finally. "I can be there by 8:30. "That works? I'll have security clear you at the front desk." "Ms. Vale, Serena." "Serena, what exactly am I walking into here?" She looked at the spreadsheets scattered across her desk, the annotated system logs, the list of names that kept growing instead of shrinking. "Honestly, I don't know yet, but I need someone who can look at this data without already having an explanation for why it's wrong. And you think that's me? I think you're the only person who's found anything useful so far." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Okay." 8:30. The line went dead, and Serena set her phone down, staring at the windows where the city was starting to come alive. Car lights moved along the streets below. Early commuters heading to jobs where the biggest crisis was a missed email or a scheduling conflict. She envied them for about 3 seconds, then went back to the data. By the time Ethan arrived, Serena had consumed 2 more cups of coffee and fielded 6 messages from Martin Garrison's assistant confirming their 9 o'clock call. She met Ethan in the lobby herself, waving off the security guard who'd started to ask for identification. "You look like you didn't sleep," Ethan said. "I didn't." He was wearing jeans and a clean shirt, carrying a worn backpack over one shoulder. He looked distinctly out of place in the marble and glass lobby, surrounded by executives in tailored suits and assistants clutching tablets like holy relics. "Come on," Serena said, heading for the elevators. "We don't have much time." They rode up in silence. Ethan kept his hands in his pockets, watching the floor numbers climb with the kind of studied neutrality that suggested he was very aware of being somewhere he didn't belong. When the doors opened on the executive floor, he followed her down the corridor without comment. Her office was exactly as she'd left it, a disaster of papers, laptops, empty coffee cups, and the faint smell of desperation. Ethan took it in with one glance, then set his backpack down near the conference table. "Where do you want me to start?" he asked. Serena handed him a tablet loaded with the full archive of shipment data from the last 6 months. "I need you to find every instance of that 7-minute gap, every route, every shipment, every anomaly. Derek's running the financial audit, but he's looking for money. I need you to look for the pattern." Ethan took the tablet and sat down, his fingers already moving across the screen. "What happens at 9? Garrison Capital calls to discuss their investment. If I can't give them a credible explanation for why we lost the merit contract, they're going to walk. And if they walk, then I lose the biggest deal I've ever closed, and this company starts bleeding cash until there's nothing left." Ethan looked up at her. "No pressure, then?" "None at all." He went back to the tablet and Serena returned to her desk, pulling up the presentation she was supposed to deliver in less than an hour. Growth projections, market analysis, strategic expansion plans, all of it built on the assumption that Veilcore was a reliable, trustworthy logistics partner. All of it now compromised by a saboteur she couldn't identify and a pattern she couldn't explain. They worked in silence for 20 minutes. The only sound, the occasional tap of keys and the distant hum of the building coming to life around them. Then Ethan spoke. Found something? Serena crossed to the table and looked over his shoulder. He'd pulled up a visualization of the GPS data, mapping every shipment route across a 6-month timeline. Red markers dotted the map like a rash. 23 instances, Ethan said, spread across 12 different routes, but they're not random. What do you mean? Look at the timing. Every anomaly happens between 9:23 and 9:30 a.m., or 2:51 and 2:58 p.m. 2 specific windows, repeated across different days, different routes, different trucks. Serena felt her stomach tighten. That's not a system failure. No, that's someone with access to your operations schedule, targeting shipments during specific monitoring gaps. We don't have monitoring gaps. Ethan tapped the screen. You do. Right here. Your system runs automated diagnostics every day at 9:23 and 2:51. 7-minute windows where the primary monitoring switches to backup sensors while the main array reboots. That's supposed to be seamless. The backup sensors are designed to maintain continuous coverage. They are maintaining coverage. That's the problem. Ethan pulled up another screen showing the temperature logs during one of the anomalies. During these windows, the backup sensors are reporting data, perfect data, exactly what you'd expect to see, but the GPS is frozen and the cargo is being compromised. Serena stared at the screen, her mind racing. Someone's feeding false data to the backup sensors. Not just false data, calibrated data. They're matching the expected pattern so closely that the system doesn't flag any discrepancies. The only reason we can see it now is because we're comparing GPS and temperature logs side by side. Who has access to the backup sensor network? That's your question to answer, but whoever it is, they've been doing this for months. Serena pulled out her phone and texted Marcus. 30 seconds later, he responded with a list of 7 names. All senior engineers. All people with clearance to access critical infrastructure. All people she'd personally approved. I need to make a call, she said, stepping away from the table. Marcus picked up immediately. Tell me you have something. I have something. The anomalies are happening during diagnostic windows. Someone's exploiting the backup sensor protocols to mask temperature failures. That's not possible. The backup system is isolated from external access. Then it's internal access. Who's been working on the diagnostic protocols in the last 6 months? There was a pause. I'll pull the logs. Give me 10 minutes. Serena ended the call and turned back to Ethan. How confident are you about this? Confident enough to stake my reputation on it, if I still had one. What does that mean? Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression carefully neutral. It means I used to do this for a living, and I was good at it. Then my wife got sick, medical bills piled up, and I took a job with a logistics company that promised flexibility and ended up delivering neither. By the time she died, I was 3 months behind on rent and unemployed. Rideshare was the only thing I could do on my own schedule. Serena felt something shift in her chest. Not pity, exactly, but recognition. The knowledge that the man sitting across from her understood what it meant to watch something collapse despite doing everything right. I'm sorry, she said. Don't be. I'm not telling you for sympathy. I'm telling you so you know I understand what's at stake here. You built something, and someone's trying to take it from you. I know what that feels like. Before Serena could respond, her phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. She opened it and felt the floor drop out again. Found something. You need to see this. Coming up now. Marcus arrived 3 minutes later, carrying a laptop and wearing the expression of someone who'd just discovered a body. Derek was with him, looking irritated and sleep-deprived in equal measure. This better be good, Derek said, dropping into a chair. I've been up all night chasing financial ghosts. Marcus set his laptop on the table and turned it toward Serena. I pulled the access logs for the backup sensor protocols. 7 people have clearance, like I said, but only one of them has been accessing the system during the diagnostic windows. He clicked to a new screen and a name appeared. Derek Sloan. The room went very quiet. Derek looked at the screen, then at Marcus, then at Serena. "What the hell is this?" "Your access credentials," Marcus said. "Logged into the backup sensor network 23 times in the last 6 months. Every single one corresponds to a shipment anomaly." "That's impossible. I haven't touched the sensor network in years." "The logs say otherwise." Derek stood up, his face flushing. "Then the logs are wrong, or someone's using my credentials. I'm the CFO, not a systems engineer. Why would I sabotage our own shipments?" "That's what I'd like to know," Serena said quietly. "You can't possibly believe this." Derek looked at her, his voice rising. "We've worked together for 3 years. I've helped you build this company from nothing, and now you're going to accuse me of sabotage based on some access logs that could have been spoofed by anyone with half a brain?" Ethan spoke for the first time since the others had entered. "The logs aren't spoofed." Derek turned on him. "And who the hell are you?" "Someone who knows how to read system data. If your credentials were stolen, there'd be traces. Login anomalies, IP mismatches, access patterns that don't fit your normal behavior. There aren't any. Whoever accessed that system knew exactly what they were doing and had legitimate clearance to do it." "This is insane." Derek looked back at Serena. "You're trusting some random contractor over me?" "I'm trusting the data," Serena said. "And right now the data says your credentials were used to compromise our shipments. Then someone stole my credentials. Prove it." Derek opened his mouth, then closed it. His hands were shaking, and Serena couldn't tell if it was from anger or fear or something else entirely. "I want my lawyer," Derek said finally. "You can call your lawyer after we finish this conversation," Serena replied. "Right now, I need answers. If you didn't access those systems, who did? Who has access to your login information?" "I don't know. Maybe IT. Maybe someone who hacked my account. Maybe this whole thing is a setup." Marcus shook his head. "Your credentials were accessed from your office computer. Same IP address, same login times as your normal work schedule. If someone was framing you, they'd have to be sitting at your desk. Or I'd have to be sitting at my desk doing my actual job while someone else used my credentials remotely. That's not how our security works. Then our security is broken." The argument escalated, voices bouncing off the glass walls until Serena held up her hand. "Enough." She looked at Derek. "I'm putting you on administrative leave, effective immediately. You'll surrender your access credentials, your company devices, and your office keys. Marcus will escort you out." Derek's face went white. "You're firing me." "I'm suspending you pending investigation. If you're innocent, the data will clear you. If I'm not, then what? You'll destroy my career based on circumstantial evidence and the word of some rideshare driver you met yesterday?" Ethan didn't react, but Serena saw his jaw tighten. "I'll do what I have to do to protect this company," Serena said. "That's always been the deal." Derek stared at her for a long moment, then turned and walked out without another word. Marcus followed, closing the door behind them with a soft click that sounded far too final. Serena sat down and put her head in her hands. "You okay?" Ethan asked. "No." Her voice was muffled by her palms. "I just accused my CFO of sabotage an hour before the biggest investor call of my life. I'm the opposite of okay. For what it's worth, I think you made the right call." "Based on what? Access logs that could be explained a dozen different ways?" Derek's right. This could be a setup. Someone could have stolen his credentials. We could be chasing the wrong person while the real saboteur keeps working. "Do you believe that?" Serena looked up. "I don't know what I believe anymore." Ethan pulled the laptop closer and started typing. "Then let's find out. If Derek's credentials were stolen, there'll be evidence. We just have to know where to look. And if we don't find any, then you'll have your answer." They spent the next 30 minutes digging through security logs, login histories, and network activity reports. Ethan worked with the methodical focus of someone who'd done this kind of forensic analysis before, cross-referencing timestamps and IP addresses until patterns began to emerge. Finally, he sat back. "He wasn't lying about one thing," Ethan said. "What's that?" "His credentials were accessed remotely, not from his office computer. Someone logged in from an external device using a VPN that masked the IP address." Serena felt a flicker of relief, followed immediately by frustration. "So someone did steal his access?" "Maybe, or he's covering his tracks." Ethan tapped the screen. "But here's the thing, the remote access started 4 months ago. Before that, all the logins were from his office. Same computer, same IP, same patterns Marcus described. What changed 4 months ago? That's what we need to find out. Serena's phone buzzed. Martin Garrison's assistant calling to confirm they were ready for the 9 o'clock meeting. She glanced at the clock, 8:52 a.m. 8 minutes to prepare a presentation that would either save her company or bury it. I have to take this, she said. Ethan nodded. Go, I'll keep digging. Serena grabbed her laptop and headed for the conference room, her heart pounding against her ribs like it was trying to escape. She closed the door, set up the video call, and forced herself to breathe. At exactly 9 o'clock, Martin Garrison's face appeared on the screen. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, the kind of man who'd built his fortune by knowing when to invest and when to walk away. Ms. Vale, he said, I hope you have good news. I have an explanation, Serena replied, keeping her voice steady. We've identified a systems vulnerability that affected several shipments, including the Merrick contract. We're implementing corrective measures and expect full resolution within 48 hours. A systems vulnerability. Garrison's expression didn't change. That's a polite way of saying something went wrong. Something did go wrong. We're fixing it. And the Merrick contract? We're negotiating recovery terms with their procurement team. The relationship isn't severed, just strained. Garrison leaned back in his chair. Ms. Vale, I've been doing this long enough to know when someone's selling me a story instead of the truth. What really happened? Serena met his eyes through the screen. Someone's been sabotaging our shipments. We don't know who yet, but we've identified the method and we're closing in on the source. I'm not asking you to invest in a company with problems. I'm asking you to invest in a company that's solving them. There was a long silence. Garrison's expression was unreadable. You suspended your CFO this morning, he said finally. Serena felt her stomach drop. How did you know that? I make it my business to know. Derek Sloan has been with Vailcore since the beginning. Suspending him suggests either incompetence or desperation. Which is it? Neither. It's due diligence. His credentials were used to access systems he shouldn't have been accessing. Whether he did it himself or someone used him as a vector, we need to know. And if you're wrong, then I'll reinstate him and apologize. But I'd rather be wrong and cautious than right and too late. Garrison was quiet for another moment, his fingers steepled under his chin. I'm going to be frank with you, Ms. Vale. I like what you've built. I think Vailcore has real potential, but potential doesn't mean much if the foundation is rotting. You've got 48 hours to prove you can handle this. If you can't, I'm walking, and I won't be the only one. Understood. Good luck. The screen went dark, and Serena sat alone in the conference room, staring at her reflection in the blank monitor. 48 hours. 2 days to find a saboteur, repair a multi-million-dollar contract, and convince an investor that her company wasn't imploding. She stood up and walked back to her office, where Ethan was still hunched over the laptop, his eyes scanning lines of code like he was searching for a message written in invisible ink. How'd it go? He asked without looking up. He gave me 48 hours. That's generous. That's a countdown. Ethan finally looked up. Then we'd better not waste time. I found something. Serena crossed to the table. What? 4 months ago, someone applied for remote access to Derek's credentials. The request came through the IT department and was approved by someone with administrative clearance. Who approved it? Ethan turned the screen toward her. The approval signature belonged to Derek himself. He authorized his own remote access? Serena frowned. Why would he do that? Could be legitimate, working from home, accessing files after hours, or it's the beginning of the sabotage. Either way, we need to find out who's been using that remote login. The VPN is masking the IP, but there might be other traces. Browser fingerprints, device identifiers, login patterns. Can you track those? Not alone. I'd need someone from your IT security team, someone you trust. Serena pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts, landing on a name she hadn't called in months. Kayla Chen, former head of IT security. Now running her own consulting firm after leaving Vailcore over what she'd called insufficient investment in infrastructure. They hadn't parted on great terms, but Kayla was one of the best forensic analysts Serena had ever met. She dialed the number. Kayla answered with her characteristic bluntness. Serena, Didn't expect to hear from you. I need your help. With what? Someone's sabotaging my company, and I need to know who. Can you be here in an hour? There was a pause. You're serious? Completely. What's the pay? Name your rate. Another pause. I'll be there in 45 minutes. The line went dead, and Serena looked at Ethan. Help's coming. Good, because we're going to need it. They spent the next hour laying out everything they'd found. Access logs, system anomalies, shipment failures, financial transactions that went nowhere. By the time Kayla arrived, the conference table looked like a conspiracy theorist's basement. Kayla walked in without knocking, took one look at the chaos, and let out a low whistle. You weren't kidding, she said. Never do when it comes to sabotage. Serena gestured to Ethan. This is Ethan Rowe. He's been helping me track the pattern. Kayla looked at him with open curiosity. You're not one of Serena's usual people. No, Ethan agreed. I'm not. Good. Her usual people missed all of this. Kayla sat down and pulled the laptop toward her. Show me what you've got. They walked her through the data piece by piece. Kayla listened without interrupting, her fingers occasionally darting across the keyboard to pull up additional screens or cross-reference information. When they finished, she sat back and folded her arms. This is bad, she said. I know. No, I mean, this is really bad. Whoever's doing this isn't just tech savvy. They know your systems inside and out. They know your protocols, your schedules, your vulnerabilities. This is someone who's either been here a long time or had extensive access to someone who has. Derek, Serena said. Maybe, or someone close to him. Kayla pulled up the remote access logs again. Let me see if I can trace the device fingerprints. If we're lucky, whoever's using this VPN made a mistake somewhere. She worked in silence for 20 minutes, her face illuminated by the screen's glow. Serena paced the office, unable to sit still, while Ethan watched Kayla work with the quiet attention of someone who understood exactly what she was doing. Finally, Kayla stopped typing. Got something, she said. Serena was at her side in 3 steps. What? The device that's been accessing Derek's credentials remotely. It's registered to Veilcore's network. Internal device, issued by your IT department. To who? Kayla clicked through another screen. This is going to be a problem. Just tell me. It's registered to Derek Sloan. The room went silent. So he was lying, Serena said quietly. Or someone cloned his device. Kayla looked up. Have you checked his office? Serena hadn't. She'd been so focused on the data, on the patterns, on the abstract problem, that she hadn't thought to look at the physical space where Derek spent 10 hours a day. No, she admitted. Then that's where we start. They took the elevator down 2 floors to the executive wing, where Derek's office sat dark and empty behind a locked door. Serena used her master key to open it, and they stepped inside. The office was immaculate. Organized bookshelves, clean desk, framed photographs of Derek with various business partners and industry leaders. Everything in its place, nothing out of order, except for the computer. Kayla crossed to Derek's desk and pressed the power button. The machine hummed to life, and after a moment, the login screen appeared. Do you have his password? Kayla asked. No, but I have administrative override. Serena pulled out her phone and sent a text to IT. 30 seconds later, a temporary access code came through, and Kayla typed it in. The desktop loaded, and Kayla started navigating through files and folders with the efficiency of someone who'd done this too many times to count. Here, she said after a moment, pointing to a folder labeled Insurance Claims. She opened it. Inside were dozens of documents, claim forms, correspondence with insurance carriers, payment records, all related to shipment losses, all filed over the last 6 months. Ethan leaned closer. How much? Kayla pulled up a spreadsheet tracking the claims. Looks like about $400,000. Paid out over 23 separate incidents. The 23 anomalies, Serena said. Exactly. Every failed shipment generated an insurance claim, and every claim was processed by Derek. Serena felt something cold settle in her chest. He was profiting from the sabotage. Looks like it. The insurance payouts went to Veilcore, but there's a secondary trail here. Kayla clicked through more files. Offshore accounts, routing numbers. Someone was siphoning money from the insurance payments before they hit the company books. How much? 60% of each claim. About $240,000 total. Serena stared at the screen, trying to process what she was seeing. Derek hadn't just sabotaged the company. He'd built an entire system to profit from the damage. He'd filed false insurance claims, routed money offshore, and covered his tracks well enough that a full financial audit hadn't caught it. "Where's the money now?" she asked. Kayla pulled up a banking interface and traced the account numbers. "Looks like it's sitting in an account registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands, LN Ventures." "LN," Ethan said suddenly. They both looked at him. "What?" Serena asked. "Derek's middle name, Lawrence. Derek Lawrence Sloan, LN." Kayla smiled without humor. "Not very creative." "Creative enough to fool a standard audit," Serena said. She pulled out her phone and called Marcus. "I need you to freeze all of Derek's accounts and alert our legal team. We're filing charges." "On what grounds?" "Fraud, embezzlement, and corporate sabotage." Kayla found the evidence. "I'm sending it now." She hung up and looked at the computer screen, at the files that represented months of careful planning and deliberate destruction. Derek had sat in her office this morning and looked her in the eye while lying through his teeth. He'd built this system under her nose, exploited her trust, and nearly destroyed everything she'd worked for. And he'd almost gotten away with it. "We need to call the police," Kayla said. "Not yet." Serena turned to Ethan. "I need you to help me build an ironclad case, something that leaves zero room for doubt. If we're going to take this to the authorities, I want every piece of evidence documented, verified, and unassailable." Ethan nodded. "How long do we have?" "Martin Garrison gave me 48 hours. We've used 6. That leaves 42. "Then we'd better get to work." They spent the rest of the day in Derek's office, methodically documenting every file, every transaction, every piece of evidence that connected him to the sabotage. Kayla pulled access logs and network traces. Ethan built timeline correlations between system anomalies and insurance claims. Serena coordinated with legal and prepared the case for presentation. By 6 o'clock, they had a stack of evidence thick enough to bury Derek 10 times over. Serena sat back in Derek's chair and looked at the sunset painting the city orange and gold beyond the windows. 42 hours. Enough time to present the case, clear her company's name, and salvage the Garrison investment, assuming nothing else went wrong. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She opened it and felt her blood go cold. "You're making a mistake. Derek isn't the one you should be worried about. Check the archive backup folder before it's too late." Serena stared at the message, her heart pounding. "Who is this?" she typed back. No response. She showed the phone to Ethan. "Does this mean anything to you?" He read the message, his expression darkening. "Archive backup folder. That's where deleted system files get stored before permanent deletion. If there's something there, it won't stay long. Can we access it?" "Kayla can." They called Kayla over and she navigated to the archive folder, her fingers moving faster than Serena could follow. The folder was massive, thousands of files scheduled for deletion, most of them routine system logs and temporary data. But one file stood out, a spreadsheet labeled ledger_final.xlsx. Kayla opened it, and the room went very still. The spreadsheet contained everything: dates of every sabotage shipment, account numbers for the offshore transfers, payment records showing exactly how much money had been siphoned, and at the bottom of every transaction, a set of initials. Not DLS, RDS. "Who's RDS?" Ethan asked. Serena felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Richard Derek Sloan," she said quietly. "Derek's father." Serena's hand was still holding the phone, the text message glowing on the screen like an accusation. Richard Derek Sloan. Derek's father had been dead for 2 years. She'd attended the funeral herself, watched Derek give the eulogy with red-rimmed eyes and a voice that kept breaking. She remembered the reception afterward, the way Derek had gripped her hand and thanked her for coming, for being there, for understanding. "His father's dead," Serena said, her voice flat. "Has been since before I hired Derek." Kayla scrolled through the ledger, her eyes scanning the dates. "Then someone's using a dead man's initials to hide their tracks. Or the ledger is older than we think," Ethan finished. He leaned over Kayla's shoulder, pointing at the timestamp in the file properties. "Look, this file was created 18 months ago, last modified 4 months ago." 4 months, Serena repeated. "Same time the remote access started." Which means Derek might not have created this, Kayla said. He might have found it, or someone gave it to him. Serena's mind was racing, trying to fit the pieces together into something that made sense. If Derek's father had set up this sabotage operation before he died, why would Derek continue it? Why not shut it down, report it, distance himself from it entirely? Unless he needed the money. Pull Derek's personal financial records, Serena said. Everything you can access legally. I want to know if he was in debt, if he had obligations we didn't know about. Kayla's fingers flew across the keyboard. Within minutes, she had access to Derek's credit reports, bank statements, and loan documents. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. He's drowning, Kayla said quietly. 3 mortgages, 1 on his primary residence, 2 on investment properties that are underwater. Credit card debt totaling $170,000, student loans from his MBA, and medical bills. For what? His father. End-stage cancer treatment. Experimental therapies not covered by insurance. Total cost over 2 years, just under $800,000. Serena felt something twist in her chest. She remembered Derek mentioning his father's illness, remembered him taking time off for treatments and appointments. She'd given him the flexibility he needed, told him family came first, never questioned the hours he kept, or the distracted look he sometimes wore during meetings. She'd trusted him, and he'd used that trust to nearly destroy everything. So he inherited his father's scheme, Ethan said. Probably found these files after the old man died, realized what he'd been doing, and decided to keep it going to cover the debts. That doesn't make him less guilty, Serena said, but her voice lacked conviction. She was angry, furious even, but underneath the anger was something else, something that felt uncomfortably like understanding. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. You have 30 minutes to decide. Expose Derek and lose everything, or let me handle this quietly. Your choice. Serena stared at the message, her pulse quickening. Someone's watching us. Ethan took the phone and read the text. Could be a bluff. Someone trying to spook you into making a mistake. Or it's real, and we're about to get blindsided. Serena stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the parking lot 6 floors below. A few scattered cars, security lights starting to flicker on as dusk settled over the city. Nothing looked threatening. Everything looked normal, which meant nothing. We need to move, Kayla said. If someone's monitoring our activity, they know we found the ledger. They know what we're looking at. We need to secure this evidence and get it somewhere they can't touch it. Where? Serena asked. Off-site. Cloud storage with encrypted access. I can set it up in 5 minutes, but we need to do it now. Serena nodded. Do it. While Kayla worked, Ethan walked to the office door and looked out into the corridor. The executive floor was mostly empty at this hour, just a few lights still burning in distant offices where workaholics and deadline chasers kept grinding away. He closed the door and turned back to Serena. When's the last time you saw Derek? He asked. This morning, when Marcus escorted him out. And you haven't heard from him since? No. I told security to flag me if he tried to access the building. Nothing's come through. What about his phone? Can you track it? Serena pulled up the company's device management system. Derek's phone showed as offline. Last known location was the Vailcore parking lot at 9:47 a.m., right around the time he would have been leaving the building. He turned it off, she said. Or someone did. Ethan frowned. That's not a good sign. You think he ran? I think he knows we're closing in, and people do unpredictable things when they're cornered. Serena's phone rang, and she nearly dropped it. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. She answered. Tell me something good, she said. Can't do that. Marcus's voice was tight. Derek's lawyer just filed an emergency injunction against the company. Claims wrongful termination, defamation, and unlawful seizure of personal property. They're asking for full access to our investigation files and demanding reinstatement pending a formal hearing. He can't be serious. He's very serious. And his lawyer's Philip Crane. Serena felt her stomach drop. Philip Crane was a litigation shark, the kind of attorney you hired when you wanted to burn everything down on your way out. He specialized in corporate warfare and had a win record that made opposing counsel nervous just seeing his name on the briefing. When's the hearing? She asked. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., Judge Clayton's chambers. That's the same time as my follow-up with Garrison. I know, I'm sorry. Serena closed her eyes. 24 hours left on Garrison's deadline, and now she'd be spending it in court instead of salvaging the investment. Derek had moved faster than she'd expected, hitting her with a legal attack that would tie her up in procedures and depositions while the real damage continued spreading. File a countersuit, she said. Fraud, embezzlement, corporate espionage, throw everything at him. If he wants a legal war, we'll give him one. That's going to get expensive. I don't care. Do it. She hung up and looked at Ethan and Kayla. Derek's going nuclear. Legal injunction, wrongful termination lawsuit, the works. He's trying to bury us in paperwork. He's stalling, Kayla said, buying time to cover his tracks or make a deal. Classic move when you know the evidence is piling up. We need that ledger locked down tighter than anything else we've got, Serena said. If Derek's lawyer gets access to our files, I want that spreadsheet behind so many layers of encryption that it would take a supercomputer a decade to crack it. Already done. Kayla closed her laptop. The ledger's uploaded to a secure server with 3-factor authentication. Only the 3 of us have access. Derek and his lawyers can file all the motions they want. They won't touch this. Serena felt a small measure of relief. At least they had the evidence secured. Now they just needed to figure out who'd sent those text messages and what they meant by, "Let me handle this quietly." Her phone buzzed a 3rd time. Time's up. You made your choice. Check the news. Serena opened a browser and navigated to the local business section. The headline hit her like a freight train. Valleco Logistics under investigation for insurance fraud. Anonymous whistleblower provides evidence of systematic claim manipulation. The article was published 12 minutes ago. It detailed allegations of fraudulent insurance claims, offshore accounts, and deliberate cargo sabotage. It named Vailcor specifically and mentioned sources close to the investigation who claimed the scheme had been operating for over a year. But it didn't name Derek. It named Serena. What the hell is this? Ethan was reading over her shoulder, his voice sharp with disbelief. Serena scrolled through the article, her hands shaking. Every detail they'd uncovered, the insurance payouts, the offshore accounts, the timing of the sabotage, was laid out in clinical detail. Except the narrative had been flipped. Instead of Derek orchestrating the fraud, the article suggested Serena had masterminded it, using her position as CEO to approve false claims and funnel money into hidden accounts. This is a setup, Kayla said. Someone fed this story to the press before we could go public with the real evidence. Who? Serena's voice came out strangled. Who would do this? Someone with access to everything we've found, Ethan said. Someone who knew we were getting close and decided to strike first. Serena's phone started ringing. Investors, board members, reporters looking for comment. She silenced it and tried to think through the panic rising in her throat. If this story gained traction, Garrison would walk. Other investors would follow. Clients would cancel contracts. The company would collapse. And it wouldn't matter that she was innocent. The damage would be done before she could prove anything. We need to make a statement, Kayla said. Get ahead of this before it spirals. And say what? That I'm not guilty of crimes I'm being publicly accused of? That'll just make me look defensive. Then we release the ledger, Ethan said. Show them Derek's name, his father's initials, the whole scheme. Prove you're not the one behind this. We can't, Serena shook her head. Derek's lawyer already filed for access to our investigation. If we release evidence publicly before the hearing, we could be accused of tampering or prejudicing the case. Crane would tear us apart. So we do nothing? We do what we should have done from the beginning. Serena stood up, her mind suddenly clear. We call the police. She dialed 911, reported the fraud, and requested a detective be sent to Vailcor immediately. The dispatcher put her on hold, transferred her twice, and finally connected her with a detective Sarah Morales from the Financial Crimes Unit. Ms. Vale, Morales said. Her voice was professional but not warm. I've already seen the news article. Are you calling to turn yourself in? I'm calling to report corporate fraud and embezzlement committed by my CFO. The article you read is a smokescreen designed to shift blame away from the real perpetrator. That's a serious allegation. I have serious evidence. Financial records, access logs, offshore account numbers, and a ledger detailing every fraudulent transaction. I can have it ready for you in 20 minutes. There was a pause. I'll be there in 30. The line went dead, and Serena looked at Ethan and Kayla. We've got 30 minutes to build a case that's clear enough for a detective who already thinks I'm guilty. Any suggestions? Yeah, Kayla said. Don't screw this up. They spent the next half hour organizing every piece of evidence into a coherent timeline. Kayla created a visual presentation mapping the sabotage incidents to Derek's access logs. Ethan cross-referenced the insurance claims with the offshore payments. Serena prepared a written statement explaining how she'd discovered the fraud and why she'd waited to report it. By the time Detective Morales arrived, they had a case file that would have impressed a federal prosecutor. Morales was in her 40s, with gray-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that had seen enough corporate liars to develop a permanent skepticism. She walked into Derek's office like she owned it, surveyed the evidence spread across the conference table, and sat down without being invited. "Show me what you've got," she said. Serena walked her through everything. The initial shipment failure, Ethan's discovery of the GPS anomalies, the access logs pointing to Derek's credentials, the insurance claims and offshore accounts, the ledger with his father's initials. Morales listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a tablet. When Serena finished, the detective sat back and folded her arms. "This is compelling," she said, "but it doesn't explain why the news is reporting you as the primary suspect." "Because someone's setting me up," Serena said. "Someone with access to our investigation leaked selective information to make it look like I'm guilty." "Who has that kind of access?" "Derek, or his lawyer, or whoever sent me these." Serena showed Morales the anonymous text messages. The detective studied them, her expression unreadable. "You don't know who sent these?" "No, the number's unlisted, probably a burner phone." "And you think it's connected to Derek?" "I think it's connected to whoever's trying to bury this investigation before we expose the truth." Morales handed the phone back. "Here's my problem, Ms. Vale. You've got a lot of evidence pointing at your CFO, but I've also got a news article suggesting you're the mastermind. Until I can verify your version of events independently, I can't rule you out as a suspect." "Then verify it. Talk to our IT security. Review the access logs yourself. Run forensics on the offshore accounts. Everything we've shown you is documented and verifiable." "I intend to, but that takes time. And in the meantime, you're going to have to cooperate fully with this investigation. That means no destroying evidence, no contacting potential witnesses, and no public statements without clearing them through me first." Serena felt the trap closing. "You're treating me like a criminal." "I'm treating you like someone at the center of a fraud investigation, which you are. I'm the victim here." "Maybe, but from where I'm sitting, you're also the CEO of a company that's been running a fraud scheme for months. Whether you were aware of it or complicit in it, that's what I'm here to figure out." Ethan spoke up for the first time since Morales had arrived. "Detective, the ledger we showed you lists initials that don't belong to Ms. Vale. The offshore accounts weren't set up by her. The remote access to the backup sensors came from Derek Sloan's credentials. None of this connects to her except through her role as CEO." Morales looked at him. "And you are?" "Ethan Rowe, independent consultant." "Consultant in what?" "Supply chain logistics. Ms. Vale brought me in to help identify the source of the shipment failures." "When?" "Yesterday." Morales raised an eyebrow. "Yesterday? So you've been involved in this investigation for less than 48 hours, and you've already identified the perpetrator, traced the money, and built a case against the CFO. That's impressive work." "I'm good at what I do." "Or you're being used as a cover story." Morales stood up. "I'm going to need statements from both of you, separately. And I'm going to need access to your company's servers, financial records, and employee files. This investigation is now official, which means you don't get to control the narrative anymore." She walked to the door, then paused and looked back at Serena. "One more thing, don't leave town. If I need to bring you in for additional questioning, I expect you to be available." "I'm not going anywhere," Serena said. Morales left, and the office fell silent. "That went well," Kayla said dryly. Serena sat down and put her head in her hands. "She thinks I did it." "She thinks it's possible you did it," Ethan corrected. "There's a difference. She's a detective. Her job is to suspect everyone until the evidence proves otherwise." "The evidence already proves otherwise. We handed her everything." "We handed her our version of everything. Now she's going to verify it independently. If the story holds up, you're clear. If it doesn't, you're in trouble." Serena looked up at him. "You think there's a chance the story doesn't hold up?" Ethan hesitated. I think someone went to a lot of trouble to make you look guilty. That means they've thought this through. They've covered angles we might not have considered, and they're not done yet. As if on cue, Serena's phone buzzed. Another message from the unknown number. You should have taken the deal. Now it gets worse. Serena stared at the screen, her heart pounding. What deal? They never offered me anything. They offered you a choice, Ethan said. Expose Derek and lose everything, or let them handle it quietly. You chose to expose Derek, so now they're making good on the threat. Who are they? I don't know, but they're watching us. They have access to information we don't control, and they're staying 3 steps ahead, which means we need to stop reacting and start anticipating. Kayla closed her laptop. I'm going to trace that phone number. It's probably a burner, but there might be metadata we can pull. Tower pings, registration info, purchase records, something. Do it, Serena said. She stood up and paced to the window, watching the city lights spread across the darkness. Somewhere out there, someone was orchestrating this. Someone who knew her systems, her people, her vulnerabilities. Someone who'd planned this carefully enough to stay invisible while everything collapsed around her. Her phone rang. Martin Garrison's name flashed on the screen. She answered. Mr. Garrison? Ms. Vale. His voice was cold. I assume you've seen the news. I have. And I can explain. I'm sure you can. Unfortunately, I'm not interested in explanations. I'm interested in results. And right now the result is that my investment firm is being asked to put $38 million into a company under investigation for fraud. The investigation is targeting my CFO, not me. The article says otherwise. The article is wrong. Maybe. But perception matters, Ms. Vale. And the perception right now is that ValeCore is toxic. I can't invest in toxicity. Serena felt the ground shift beneath her. You're pulling out. I'm suspending our agreement pending resolution of the investigation. If you're cleared, we'll revisit. If you're not, the deal is dead. That could take months. Then you'd better hope it doesn't. He paused. I liked what you were building, Ms. Vale. I really did. But I can't save a company that's determined to destroy itself. The line went dead. Serena lowered the phone and stared at it, feeling the weight of everything she'd built start to crumble. Without Garrison's investment, ValeCore couldn't expand. Without expansion, they couldn't compete with the larger logistics firms moving into their market. Without competition, they'd lose clients, revenue, stability. Everything she'd worked for, slipping away because someone had decided she was easier to destroy than Derek. He pulled out, she said quietly. Ethan nodded. I heard. We're done. Without that investment, the company doesn't survive the next quarter. Then we have 3 months to fix this. 3 months? Serena laughed, a bitter sound. We don't have 3 days. The police are investigating me. The board's probably calling for my resignation. Clients are going to start canceling contracts the second they see the headlines. This is over. It's not over until you stop fighting. Serena turned to face him. And what exactly am I supposed to fight? I can't fight rumors. I can't fight perception. I can't fight whoever's pulling the strings behind this because I don't even know who they are. Then we find out. Ethan's voice was calm, steady. We trace the messages. We dig into Derek's connections. We find whoever's running this operation and we expose them before they can do any more damage. With what resources? The police have taken over the investigation. Garrison's gone. My CFO's suing me. I'm running out of allies here, Ethan. You've still got me. Serena looked at him. This man she'd met less than 2 days ago, who'd stumbled into her crisis by accident and stayed because something in him recognized the fight. He wasn't getting paid for this. He wasn't obligated to help. He was just a rideshare driver with a background in logistics and a willingness to see patterns no one else noticed. And right now, he was the only person she trusted completely. Why are you still here? She asked. Because I know what it's like to watch something you built fall apart. And I know what it's like to wish someone had been there to help. He met her eyes. I can't fix what happened to me, but maybe I can help fix this. Before Serena could respond, Kayla looked up from her laptop. Found something. They both turned. The burner phone, Kayla said. It was purchased 6 weeks ago from a retailer in North Denver. Cash transaction, no ID required. But the store has security cameras. I pulled the footage. She turned the laptop around. The screen showed grainy surveillance footage of a man in a baseball cap and sunglasses buying a phone at the counter. The timestamp read 4:23 p.m., 6 weeks ago. "Can you enhance the image?" Serena asked. "Already did. Best I can get is this." Kayla clicked to a zoomed frame. The man's face was partially obscured, but there was something familiar about his build, his posture. Ethan leaned closer. "Go back. Show me his hands." Kayla rewound the footage. The man reached across the counter to hand cash to the clerk, and his sleeve rode up, revealing his wrist. There was a watch, distinctive, gold band, square face. "I've seen that watch before," Serena said slowly. "Where?" Ethan asked. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her photo gallery, looking for the company holiday party from last year. There, a group photo of the executive team. She zoomed in on Derek's wrist. Same watch. "It's Derek," she said. "He bought the burner phone. He's been sending the messages." But even as she said it, something didn't sit right. If Derek was the one sending threats, why would he threaten himself by exposing the fraud? Why lead her to the archive folder where the ledger was hidden? Unless he wanted her to find it. "He's framing himself," Ethan said, reading her thoughts. "Or someone's framing him. Either way, the ledger was meant to be discovered. But why? To make you think you'd won. To make you focus all your attention on Derek while the real operation continues somewhere else." Serena felt a chill run down her spine. Then who's really behind this? Her phone buzzed one more time. Same unknown number. "You're getting warmer, but you're out of time. Derek will take the fall, and you'll take the blame. Unless you meet me. Parking garage. Level 3. 10 minutes. Come alone, or the next story names your entire board." Serena showed the message to Ethan and Kayla. "Don't go," Kayla said immediately. "This is a trap. Or it's the only chance I have to find out who's doing this," Serena countered. "Then I'm coming with you," Ethan said. "The message says alone." "I don't care what the message says. You're not walking into a parking garage by yourself to meet an anonymous blackmailer." Serena looked at him, then at Kayla, then back at her phone. 10 minutes. Not enough time to call Morales. Not enough time to set up security. Just enough time to decide whether she was willing to gamble everything on one more roll of the dice. "Fine," she said. "You can come. But stay out of sight. If they see you, they might run. And if they don't run, then we find out who's been destroying my company and why." They took the stairs down to the parking garage, moving quickly and quietly through the empty stairwell. The garage was mostly deserted at this hour, just a few cars scattered across the first 2 levels. Level 3 was darker, the overhead lights flickering and buzzing with the kind of electrical uncertainty that made shadows feel aggressive. Serena stepped out into the open, her footsteps echoing off concrete. Ethan hung back near the stairwell door, watching. A car was parked in the far corner, engine running, headlights off. Serena walked toward it, her pulse hammering in her ears. The driver's door opened and a figure stepped out. It wasn't Derek. It was Marcus. Serena stopped walking. "What are you doing here?" Marcus looked at her with an expression she'd never seen before. Not anger, not guilt, just a kind of tired resignation. "I'm sorry, Serena," he said, "but this was always going to end badly for one of us. I just made sure it wasn't me." Serena felt the air leave her lungs. Marcus stood 15 feet away, backlit by the flickering garage lights, and for a moment she couldn't process what she was seeing. Marcus Chen, her operations director. The man who'd been with her since the beginning, who'd helped her build the routing systems, who'd worked 18-hour days to make sure every shipment arrived on time. The man who'd been feeding her information about the sabotage all along. "You," she said. The word came out flat, stunned. "Me." Marcus's hands were in his pockets, his posture relaxed in a way that made Serena's skin crawl. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't apologetic. He was just done pretending. "Why?" Serena's voice cracked. "Why would you do this?" "Because I could." Marcus shrugged. "Because the system you built made it easy. Because Derek's father handed me the perfect blueprint before he died, and all I had to do was keep it running. Richard Sloan," the pieces were clicking together now, sharp and painful. "He worked with you." "He worked for me, actually. Richard was desperate. Cancer treatments cost more than he'd saved, more than his insurance would cover. I offered him a deal. Help me siphon money from the insurance claims, and I'd make sure his son never had to know how bad things had gotten. And when he died, I approached Derek, showed him the ledger, showed him how much debt his father had left behind, told him I could make it disappear if he kept the system running. Marcus smiled without warmth. He didn't want to, spent 2 weeks agonizing over it, but eventually people choose survival over principles. They always do. Serena took a step forward. So you set him up, made it look like he was running the operation. I gave him enough rope to hang himself. His credentials, his access, his name on everything that mattered. When you started digging, I knew you'd find Derek first. And you did. The text messages, the archive folder, you wanted me to find the ledger. I wanted you to think you'd solved the problem. Derek takes the fall, you get your crisis resolved, Garrison stays happy, and I keep operating in the background. Clean and simple. Except I didn't stop digging. Marcus's smile faded. No, you didn't. You brought in outside help. His eyes flicked past Serena toward the stairwell. Someone who actually knew what to look for. Serena didn't turn around, but she felt Ethan's presence behind her, still hidden in the shadows. Marcus knew he was there, had probably known from the beginning. What do you want? Serena asked. I want you to walk away. Let Derek take the blame. Let the police close their investigation. Let this whole mess fade into corporate history. You get to keep your company. I get to keep my operation. Everyone wins. Except Derek. Derek made his choice when he decided to keep his father's scheme alive. He's not innocent. Neither are you. No, Marcus agreed, but I'm smarter, and I have insurance you don't want me to use. He pulled out his phone and held it up. The screen showed an email draft ready to send. The recipient list included every major business publication in the country, the SEC, and half a dozen regulatory agencies. The subject line read, Valleco CEO, Serena Valey's complete fraud operation, evidence attached. Those attachments include doctored financial records showing you approved every fraudulent insurance claim, Marcus said. Bank statements suggesting you received payments from the offshore accounts. Emails that appear to be from your personal account coordinating the sabotage. None of it's real, but all of it's convincing enough to bury you for the next decade. Serena felt cold fury replace the shock. You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. Same one I offered before. Let this go or lose everything. And if I refuse? Then I send this email. Derek's lawyer uses it to destroy you in court. The police expand their investigation to include you as a primary suspect, and Garrison Capital doesn't just walk away. They publicly denounce you. Your reputation, your company, your future, gone. All because you couldn't accept a win when it was handed to you. Serena's hands were shaking. She forced them still. You really think I'm going to let you get away with this? I think you're going to make the smart choice. The same choice everyone makes when they're standing where you are. You're going to calculate the cost of fighting me versus the cost of walking away. And you're going to realize that walking away is cheaper. You don't know me very well. I know you better than you think. I've watched you build this company. Watched you make hard decisions, cut losses, prioritize results over sentiment. You're a survivor, Serena, and survivors know when they're beaten. Ethan's voice cut through the tension from the shadows near the stairwell. She's not beaten. Marcus turned his head slightly, acknowledging Ethan without surprise. The consultant. Still here, still thinking you can solve problems you don't understand. I understand them fine. Ethan stepped into the light, and Serena saw he was holding his phone, screen facing Marcus. I've been recording this conversation since you started talking. Every word, every confession. Marcus's expression didn't change. That recording won't hold up in court. Single-party consent state, but you're not a party to this conversation. It's inadmissible. Maybe, but it's pretty damning for the court of public opinion. Ethan held up the phone. You just confessed to orchestrating a fraud scheme, framing your coworker, and blackmailing your CEO. You think the business press is going to care about admissibility? For the first time, Marcus looked genuinely irritated. You're bluffing. Try me. They stared at each other across the concrete expanse, neither one blinking. Serena felt the balance shift, just slightly. Marcus had planned for her. He'd anticipated her moves, her resources, her desperation, but he hadn't planned for Ethan, a wild card who didn't play by corporate rules and had nothing to lose. Marcus's finger hovered over his phone screen. You release that recording, I send this email. We both lose. Except I'm not the one running a criminal operation, Ethan said. You are. And once that recording goes public, the police won't care about your fake evidence against Serena. They'll be too busy investigating you. They'll investigate both of us. She'll still go down. Maybe, but you'll go down first, and harder. Serena watched the calculation play across Marcus's face. He'd built this plan around controlling the narrative, staying invisible, letting others take the fall. Being exposed publicly wasn't part of the design. You're making a mistake, Marcus said, his voice dropping. Both of you. I offered you a way out, a clean resolution. You're choosing the messy one. We're choosing the honest one, Serena said, and I'm done being afraid of you. She pulled out her own phone and dialed Detective Morales. The detective answered on the second ring. Miss Vale? What is it? I'm in the Vale Corps parking garage, level 3. My operations director just confessed to running the fraud operation. He's here now, and he's attempting to blackmail me into silence. I need you here immediately. There was a pause. Don't move. I'm 10 minutes out. Serena ended the call and looked at Marcus. You have 10 minutes to decide what you're going to do. Run, stay, and try to explain yourself, or send that email and guarantee we all go down together. Your choice. Marcus stood there, his thumb still hovering over the send button. The garage was silent except for the hum of the overhead lights and the distant sound of traffic from the street above. Then he laughed. It was a short, bitter sound. You really don't get it, do you? He shook his head. I've been doing this for 3 years. 3 years of skimming insurance payouts, routing money offshore, covering my tracks. And I would have kept doing it if you hadn't brought in outside help. If you'd just stayed in your lane, trusted your own people, this never would have happened. You're right, Serena said. I should have seen it sooner. I should have questioned the anomalies, pushed harder on the financial audits, noticed that you were always the first one with answers. But I trusted you, and you used that trust to steal from me. I used that trust to survive. You think you're the only one with problems? The only one trying to keep everything from falling apart? Marcus's voice rose. I have a mother in a nursing home that costs $8,000 a month. I have 2 kids in private school because the public schools in my district are a joke. I have a mortgage I can barely afford and a retirement account that's worth less than I paid into it. This job doesn't pay enough to cover any of that. So yeah, I found a way to make it work. Sue me. I am suing you, Serena said, and pressing charges, and making sure everyone knows what you did. Marcus's expression hardened. Then you're a fool. He tapped his phone screen. The email whooshed into the void, sent to dozens of recipients simultaneously. Marcus held up the phone so Serena could see the confirmation. There, he said. Now we all burn together. Hope it was worth it. Ethan moved fast, closing the distance between them before Marcus could react. He grabbed Marcus's phone and threw it across the garage, where it shattered against a concrete pillar. Marcus swung at him, but Ethan ducked and shoved him back against the car. That was stupid, Ethan said. Was it? Marcus was breathing hard, but he was smiling. The email's already sent. Breaking my phone doesn't unsend it. No, but it stops you from sending anything else. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Marcus heard them, and his smile faded. This isn't over, he said. Yeah, Ethan replied. It is. 2 police cars pulled into the garage, lights flashing. Detective Morales got out of the first one, followed by 3 uniformed officers. She took in the scene, Serena standing near the stairwell, Ethan holding Marcus against the car, the shattered phone on the ground, and her expression went from cautious to grim. Marcus Chen? She asked. That's him, Serena said. Morales nodded to the officers who moved forward and pulled Marcus away from Ethan. They cuffed him and read him his rights while Morales approached Serena. You want to tell me what happened here? The detective asked. Serena did. She explained the confrontation, the confession, the blackmail email, and the recording Ethan had made. Morales listened, her face unreadable, then turned to Ethan. Let me hear it, she said. Ethan played the recording. Marcus's voice filled the garage, confessing to fraud, implicating Richard Sloan, describing how he'd framed Derek. When it finished, Morales took Ethan's phone and forwarded the file to her own device. This changes things, she said. But it doesn't clear you completely, Ms. Vale. I still need to verify everything independently. I understand, But you have the real culprit now. Marcus orchestrated this. Derek was coerced. I was set up. Maybe? We'll see what the evidence says. Morales looked at Marcus, who was standing between two officers, his face blank. Mr. Chen, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and attempted extortion. You have the right to remain silent. I know my rights, Marcus interrupted, and I'm not saying anything without my lawyer. Smart choice, Morales gestured to the officers. Take him in. I'll be right behind you. They led Marcus away, and Serena watched him go, feeling a strange mix of anger and emptiness. She'd won. The saboteur was caught. The fraud was exposed. But the victory felt hollow, tainted by the knowledge that someone she'd trusted had been working against her all along. Morales turned back to Serena. The email he sent? That's going to be a problem. Even if it's fake, it's out there now. You're going to have to deal with the fallout. I know. I'll make a statement to the press clarifying that you're not a suspect in the ongoing investigation. That might help, but you should prepare for a rough few days. I've had a rough few days already. What's a few more? Morales almost smiled. You're tougher than you look. I have to be. The detective left, and Serena stood alone in the garage with Ethan. The sirens faded into the distance, and the silence rushed back in, heavy and exhausting. You okay? Ethan asked. No, but I will be. That was brave. What you did. That was desperate. I didn't have any other options. You had the option to take his deal, walk away. Let Derek take the fall and pretend none of this happened. That's not an option. That's surrender. Ethan nodded. Yeah, it is. They walked back to the stairwell together, climbing the 6 floors to the executive level in silence. When they reached Serena's office, Kayla was still there, hunched over her laptop with the kind of focus that suggested she'd been working the entire time they'd been gone. She looked up when they entered. I heard the sirens. What happened? Marcus confessed, Serena said. He's been arrested. Kayla's eyes widened. Marcus? Your operations director, Marcus? The same. Holy hell! Kayla sat back. I did not see that coming. Neither did I. So what now? Serena collapsed into her chair and stared at the ceiling. Now we clean up the mess. Marcus sent a fake evidence dump to the press and half the regulatory agencies in the country. We're going to have to issue statements, provide real evidence to counter his fabrications, and convince everyone that I'm not a criminal. That's going to take time. We don't have time. Garrison already pulled out. Other investors are probably going to follow. Clients will start canceling contracts. The company's reputation is shredded. Then we rebuild it, Ethan said. Serena looked at him. With what? We just lost our biggest investment. We're under investigation. Our CFO is suing us, and our operations director is in jail. There's nothing left to rebuild with. There's you and the truth. That's more than most people start with. Serena wanted to believe him, wanted to think that honesty and determination would be enough to salvage this disaster. But she'd been running a company long enough to know that sometimes the truth didn't matter as much as perception. And right now, the perception was that Veilcore was toxic. Her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, assuming it was another reporter or angry investor. But the caller ID showed an unknown number, and something made her answer. Miss Vale? The voice was unfamiliar, male, professional. Speaking. This is Thomas Kerrigan. I'm an attorney representing Derek Sloan. I understand there have been some developments in the investigation. That's one way to put it. My client would like to speak with you. Off the record, no lawyers present. Just the two of you. Serena frowned. Why? Because he has information you need. Information about Marcus Chen that didn't make it into the ledger. What kind of information? The kind that explains why Marcus was so confident he could frame both of you and walk away clean. My client is willing to share it, but only if you agree to drop the wrongful termination suit and reinstate him pending a full review. Serena's first instinct was to refuse. Derek had still participated in the fraud, still used his father's scheme to cover debts, still lied to her face. But if he had information that could help lock down the case against Marcus, information that could prevent more damage, she couldn't afford to ignore it. Where and when? She asked. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., his lawyer's office. I'll text you the address. The line went dead, and Serena set the phone down. Derek wants to meet, she said. Do you trust him? Kayla asked. No, but I don't have to trust him to use what he knows. She looked at Ethan. Will you come with me? You sure you want me there? I'm sure I don't want to walk into another meeting alone. Not after tonight. Ethan nodded. Then I'll be there. They worked until midnight, preparing statements for the press, organizing evidence for the police, and drafting contingency plans for every worst-case scenario Serena could imagine. By the time they finally shut down the laptops and turned off the lights, Serena felt like she'd aged 10 years in 2 days. Ethan offered to drive her home, and she didn't argue. They rode in silence through empty streets, the city quiet in a way that felt almost peaceful after the chaos of the day. When they pulled up in front of her building, Serena didn't move to get out right away. Thank you, she said, for everything. I don't know what I would have done without you. You would have figured it out. You're smarter than you give yourself credit for. I didn't see Marcus coming. I should have. No one sees betrayal coming. That's what makes it betrayal. Serena looked at him. How do you know when to trust someone? Ethan thought about it. You don't. You just decide the risk is worth taking, and then you deal with the consequences either way. That's a terrible system. Yeah, but it's the only one we've got. Serena smiled despite herself. You're annoyingly practical. I've been told. She opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air. I'll see you tomorrow, 8 a.m. I'll be there. She watched him drive away, then went inside and collapsed on her couch without bothering to turn on the lights. Her phone buzzed with notifications, emails, texts, news alerts about the fraud investigation. She ignored all of them and closed her eyes. Tomorrow, she'd deal with Derek. Tomorrow, she'd start rebuilding. Tomorrow, she'd figure out how to salvage a company that was currently bleeding credibility from a dozen different wounds. But tonight, she just needed to sleep. The alarm went off at 6 a.m., dragging Serena out of a dreamless void. She showered, dressed in a suit that projected confidence she didn't feel, and met Ethan in the lobby at 7:30. They drove to Derek's lawyer's office in silence, both of them running through scenarios for how the meeting might go. The office was downtown, occupying the 20th floor of a glass tower that reflected the morning sun like a warning. They checked in with the receptionist and were led to a conference room where Derek was already waiting. He looked worse than Serena had ever seen him. Unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. He stood when she entered, then seemed to think better of it, and sat back down. Serena, he said. His voice was hoarse. Derek. She sat across from him, Ethan beside her. Derek's lawyer, Thomas Kerrigan, sat at the head of the table with a legal pad and an expression that suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. Thank you for coming, Derek said. Your lawyer said you have information, so talk. Derek glanced at Kerrigan, who nodded. What I'm about to tell you is off the record. It can't be used in the wrongful termination suit, and it can't be shared with the police without my consent. That's a lot of conditions, Serena said. It's a lot of information. She considered, then nodded. Fine. Off the record. Derek took a breath. Marcus didn't just run the fraud operation. He had partners. Other people inside Veilcore who helped him manipulate the data, file the false claims, move the money. Who? I don't know all their names, but I know there are at least 3 others. Marcus kept their identities compartmentalized, only he knew the full network. But I have access logs showing when they accessed the systems, and I have transaction records linking them to the offshore accounts. Why didn't you mention this before? Because I was terrified. Marcus told me if I exposed the network, they'd make sure I took the fall for everything, not just the fraud, but a dozen other crimes they'd manufactured evidence for. Tax evasion, money laundering, bribery. He said they'd bury me so deep I'd never see daylight again. And you believed him. I believed him enough not to risk it. Derek looked down at his hands. I know that makes me a coward, but I was drowning, Serena. My father left me with debts I couldn't pay, medical bills that kept coming even after he was gone. Marcus offered me a way out, and I took it. I'm not proud of that, but I won't let him destroy you too. Serena studied him, trying to see past the exhaustion and fear to the truth underneath. Derek had made terrible choices, but he wasn't the mastermind. He was a desperate man who'd been used by someone smarter and more ruthless. Where are these access logs? She asked. Derek pulled a flash drive from his pocket and slid it across the table. Everything I have, names, timestamps, transaction trails. It's not complete, but it's enough to start tracking them. Serena took the drive. And in exchange, you want your job back. I want a chance to make this right. Reinstate me on probation, let me help clean up the mess, and when it's done, I'll resign quietly. No lawsuit, no public fight. Just a chance to fix what I helped break. That's asking a lot. I know, but you need what's on that drive, and I need to prove I'm not the person Marcus tried to make me. Serena looked at Ethan. He was watching Derek with the same careful assessment she'd seen when he analyzed data, looking for patterns, testing for inconsistencies. What do you think? She asked. I think he's telling the truth, Ethan said. Or at least he believes he's telling the truth. Whether the information is useful, we'll have to verify. Serena turned back to Derek. I'll review what's on this drive. If it checks out, we'll discuss reinstatement. But understand, this doesn't erase what you did. You participated in fraud. You lied to me. You put this company at risk. Even if I bring you back, it's temporary and conditional. I understand. Good. Serena stood. Anything else? Derek hesitated. Watch your back. Marcus might be in custody, but the network he built is still out there, and they're going to be looking for someone to blame now that he's gone. I'll keep that in mind. She left the conference room with Ethan and Kerrigan following. They rode the elevator down in silence, and when they reached the lobby, Serena finally let herself breathe. You believe him? She asked Ethan. I believe he's scared. Whether that makes him honest or just careful, I don't know yet. They walked to the car and drove back to Valecore. Serena plugged the flash drive into her laptop and started reviewing the files while Ethan navigated traffic. The data was dense, hundreds of access logs, transaction records, email threads. But as she dug deeper, patterns emerged. 3 users beyond Marcus and Derek had accessed the backup sensor network during the diagnostic windows. 3 users with administrative credentials and enough technical knowledge to manipulate the data without leaving obvious traces. Serena pulled up their employee profiles and felt her stomach sink. The first was Rachel Yoon, Senior Network Administrator. 10 years with the company, impeccable record. The second was James Kowalski, Lead Systems Engineer. Hired during Valecore's expansion phase, responsible for building the cold chain monitoring protocols. The third was Amanda Price, Head of IT Operations. She'd been Serena's second hire, someone she'd personally recruited from a competitor. People she trusted. People who'd helped her build the infrastructure that was now being used against her. I know these names, Serena said quietly. Ethan glanced over. People you work with? People I thought I knew. Her phone rang. Detective Morales. Ms. Vale, we've reviewed the recording from last night. It's enough to move forward with charges against Marcus Chen, but I need you to come in and give a formal statement. When? This afternoon, 2 p.m. Can you make it? I'll be there. Serena ended the call and looked at the flash drive in her hand. The evidence Derek had provided could crack open the entire network. But using it meant exposing 3 more people she'd worked with, trusted, and believed in. It meant accepting that the rot went deeper than she'd imagined. She made the decision anyway. We're going to the police, she told Ethan. All of it. The flash drive, the names, everything Derek gave us. If there's a network, we dismantle it, no matter who gets hurt. Including you? Including me? Because that was the only way forward. Not the easy way, not the safe way, but the only way that let her look in the mirror and recognize the person staring back. Detective Morales didn't look surprised when Serena handed over the flash drive. She took it, turned it over in her hand like she was weighing more than just plastic and metal, and set it on the table between them. Derek Sloan gave you this, Morales said. It wasn't a question. This morning, he claims it contains evidence of other people involved in Marcus's operation. And you trust him? Serena looked at the detective across the interview room table. Ethan sat beside her, quiet but present. The room smelled like stale coffee, an industrial cleaner, and the fluorescent lights hummed with a frequency that made her teeth ache. I don't trust anyone anymore, Serena said, but the data's either real or it isn't. You can verify that independently. Morales plugged the drive into her laptop and started scrolling through files. Her expression didn't change as she read, but Serena watched her shoulders tighten incrementally with each screen. 3 names, Morales said after a long silence. Rachel Yoon, James Kowalski, Amanda Price. These are your employees. Senior staff, people I hired personally. And you had no idea they were involved? No. Morales looked up. Ms. Vale, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Is there any possibility you're being set up again, that Derek's feeding you false information to deflect blame onto others? Serena had asked herself the same question a dozen times since leaving Derek's lawyer's office. It's possible, but the access logs match the pattern Ethan identified. The timestamps correlate with the sabotage incidents. Either Derek manufactured incredibly detailed fake evidence, or he's telling the truth. Or someone manufactured it for him. Then verify it. Pull your own logs, run your own forensics. I'm not asking you to take my word for it. I'm asking you to investigate. Morales closed the laptop. I will. But understand, if these three people are part of Marcus's network, and if they know we're closing in, they're going to start protecting themselves. That could mean destroying evidence, creating alibis, or worse. Worse how? People who've spent months committing fraud don't usually surrender quietly. They run, they hide, or they fight back. Sometimes violently. Serena felt a chill run through her. She hadn't considered that the people she'd worked alongside for years might be dangerous. Desperate, yes. Cornered, definitely. But violent? What do you suggest? She asked. Stay out of the office for the next 48 hours. Let us handle the investigation without you in the building. If these people realize you're the one who exposed them, you become a target. I can't just abandon my company. You can if staying puts you at risk. Morales stood. I'm going to bring these three in for questioning, separately, before they can coordinate stories. While I'm doing that, I need you somewhere safe. I'll go home. Not good enough. They know where you live. Morales looked at Ethan. You have somewhere she can stay? Somewhere off the grid? Ethan nodded slowly. Yeah, I have a place. 20 minutes later, Serena was sitting in Ethan's car, watching the city slide past as they drove away from downtown. She'd grabbed her laptop and a change of clothes from her apartment, left a message with her assistant saying she was taking personal time, and walked away from everything she'd built. It felt like retreat. It felt like failure. Where are we going? She asked. My place. It's not much, but it's quiet, and no one knows about it except me and my daughter. I don't want to intrude. You're not intruding. Emma's with her grandparents this week anyway. It'll just be us. They drove for another 30 minutes, leaving the high-rises and business districts behind for residential neighborhoods that gradually gave way to smaller houses with chain-link fences and yards that needed mowing. Ethan pulled into the driveway of a modest single-story house with faded blue siding and a basketball hoop missing its net. Home, he said. Inside, the house was clean but spare, furniture that looked secondhand but cared for. Photographs of a little girl at various ages covering one wall, a kitchen that smelled faintly of the morning's coffee. It was the kind of place where people lived actual lives, not the sterile showroom Serena called home. You can take the guest room, Ethan said, pointing down a short hallway. I'll make coffee. Serena set her bag down and looked around. There was something grounding about being in a space that didn't reflect her own wealth or status, a space where the stakes were different, smaller, more human. She found Ethan in the kitchen, measuring coffee grounds with the precision of someone who'd done it 1,000 times. He didn't look at her when he spoke. You okay? I don't know. I'm sitting in a stranger's house, hiding from my own employees, watching my company implode. I'm not sure okay is available right now. Fair enough. He poured water into the machine and pressed the button. The gurgling sound filled the silence. For what it's worth, you're doing the right thing. Am I? Because from where I'm standing, the right thing looks an awful lot like losing everything. Only if you think everything is your company. Serena leaned against the counter. My company is everything. It's what I've spent the last 8 years building. It's my reputation, my legacy, my proof that I'm more than just someone who got lucky. And if you lose it, then I've lost everything. Ethan handed her a mug of coffee. You haven't lost everything. You still have the truth. You still have people who believe you. You still have yourself. That's not enough. Maybe not. But it's more than a lot of people have. They sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and not talking. Serena's phone buzzed periodically with messages she didn't read. The world was continuing without her, and she couldn't decide if that was liberating or terrifying. After an hour, Ethan broke the silence. Can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you build Veilcore? What were you trying to prove? Serena considered this question. No one had asked her that in years. Everyone assumed they knew the answer: money, power, success, the standard motivations people ascribe to anyone who built something from nothing. I wanted to matter, she said finally. I grew up watching my parents work themselves to death for companies that didn't care about them. My dad spent 30 years in middle management, and when the company downsized, they let him go without a second thought. My mom worked retail until her knees gave out. They did everything right, followed all the rules, and it got them nowhere. So you decided to make your own rules. I decided to build something that couldn't be taken away by someone else's decision. Something that was mine, that I controlled, that proved I was more than just another disposable employee. And did it work? Serena looked at her coffee. For a while, until I realized that the thing I built to protect myself from being disposable made me responsible for hundreds of other people who trusted me not to dispose of them. And now I'm watching that fall apart, and I don't know if I can save it. Maybe you don't have to save it alone. I've been alone this entire time. That's how I got here. That's not true. You brought me in. You trusted Kayla. You gave Derek a chance to help fix what he broke. You're not as alone as you think. Serena's phone rang. Morales. We've brought in all three, the detective said without preamble. Rachel Yoon, James Kowalski, and Amanda Price. They're in separate interview rooms right now. And Rachel's lawyer is already negotiating immunity in exchange for testimony. She's ready to roll on the entire operation. Serena felt something loosen in her chest. What did she say? Marcus recruited her 18 months ago, offered her 20% of the insurance payouts in exchange for manipulating the sensor data during diagnostic windows. She claims she didn't know the full scope of the operation, just her piece of it. Do you believe her? I believe she's scared enough to tell us everything she knows, which includes how the money moved, who approved the false claims, and where Marcus hid the offshore accounts. She's giving us the whole network. What about the other two? James is claiming ignorance, says he was just following orders and didn't know the sensor modifications were part of a fraud scheme. Amanda's not talking at all, lawyered up immediately and won't answer questions. So we have one cooperative witness, one maybe, and one stonewalling. That's about right. But Rachel's testimony is solid. Combined with the ledger, the access logs, and Marcus's confession from the parking garage, we have enough to charge all of them. Serena closed her eyes. How long before this goes public? We'll issue a press release tomorrow morning. By then, the arrests will be processed and the charges will be filed. You should prepare a statement. What kind of statement? The kind that makes it clear you were the victim here, not the perpetrator. The fake evidence Marcus sent out is still circulating. You need to counter it with facts before the narrative gets away from you again. I'll work on it. One more thing. Derek Sloan's cooperation is going to help his case significantly. The DA's office is considering reducing the charges in exchange for his continued testimony. You should know that before you decide whether to reinstate him. Even if the charges are reduced, he still participated in fraud. He did, but he also helped us dismantle the network. That counts for something. Serena thanked Morales and ended the call. She sat at Ethan's kitchen table, staring at her phone, trying to process the fact that it was actually happening. The investigation was real. The arrests were real. The network Marcus had built was being torn apart, piece by piece. And she was still standing. Good news? Ethan asked. Rachel Yoon is cooperating. Morales has enough evidence to charge everyone involved. It's over. The investigation's over. The cleanup's just starting. He was right. Tomorrow she'd have to face the press, the board, the investors. She'd have to rebuild a company that had been gutted from the inside. She'd have to decide who to trust, who to forgive, and who to let go. But tonight, she could just sit in a stranger's kitchen and drink coffee and pretend the world wasn't waiting for her to save it. Thank you, she said. For what? For not letting me give up. For seeing the pattern when I couldn't. For being here when I needed someone who didn't have an agenda. Ethan shrugged. I told you. I know what it's like to watch everything fall apart and wish someone had been there. I'm just returning the favor the universe never gave me. Do you regret it? Helping me instead of just driving away? No. Do you regret asking? No. They sat in comfortable silence as the afternoon faded into evening. Serena's phone continued buzzing with messages, but she ignored them all. There would be time tomorrow to deal with the consequences, the questions, the endless work of putting things back together. Tonight, she just needed to breathe. The next morning, Serena woke up in Ethan's guest room to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The news of the arrests had broken overnight, and the business press was in a frenzy. She read through the headlines while drinking coffee Ethan had already made. Valleco Operations Director arrested in fraud scheme. Multiple employees charged in corporate sabotage case CEO. Serena Vale cleared as investigation reveals internal conspiracy. The narrative had shifted. She was no longer the suspect. She was the whistleblower. The CEO who'd exposed corruption in her own company, cooperated with police, and helped dismantle a fraud network. It was exactly what Morales had said she needed. But it still felt strange to see her name attached to heroism when all she'd done was refuse to let Marcus destroy her. Her phone rang. Martin Garrison. She answered. "Mr. Garrison." "Ms. Vale, I've been reading the news." "I imagine you have. I owe you an apology. I pulled my investment based on incomplete information. That was premature." "You were protecting your firm. I don't blame you." "I should have given you the benefit of the doubt. You've built something impressive, and you fought to protect it even when it would have been easier to walk away. That's the kind of leadership I want to invest in." Serena felt her heart skip. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying the $38 million is back on the table. Same terms, same timeline. If you still want it." "I want it?" "Good. I'll have my lawyers draw up the revised agreement. We can sign by the end of the week." He hung up, and Serena sat staring at her phone. The investment was back. Valecore would survive. Everything she'd fought for, bled for, was still within reach. She walked into the kitchen where Ethan was making breakfast. "Garrison's back in. Full investment, same terms." Ethan smiled. "That's good news." "It's more than good. It's everything." "So what happens now?" "Now I go back to work. I rebuild the operations team, hire people I can actually trust, implement new oversight protocols. I make sure this never happens again." "Sounds like a lot of work." "It is, which is why I need a systems advisor." She looked at him. "Someone who knows how to spot patterns no one else sees. Someone who's not afraid to tell me when something's wrong. Someone I can trust." Ethan set down the spatula. "You're offering me a job. I'm offering you a position, part-time, flexible hours, your own terms. You'd work from wherever you want, review our systems remotely, flag potential vulnerabilities, and you'd never miss 6 o'clock pickup." "Why me?" "Because in the last 3 days, you've done more to save my company than people I've known for years. Because you don't owe me anything, which means I can trust your motives. And because you're good at this, Ethan, better than you think." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm not a corporate guy. I don't do office politics or executive meetings. I don't need a corporate guy. I need someone who sees the truth and tells it to me straight. Can you do that?" "Yeah, I can do that." "Then the job's yours, if you want it." Ethan smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. "I want it." Serena returned to Valecore headquarters the next afternoon. The lobby felt different, cleaner somehow, like the air had been purged of something toxic. Security waved her through with genuine smiles instead of nervous glances. Her assistant greeted her with relief instead of fear. The executive floor was quieter. Derek's office sat empty, waiting for a decision Serena still hadn't made. Marcus's office had been sealed by the police, yellow tape across the door like a scar. Amanda Price's desk had been cleaned out, her personal effects boxed and removed. Serena's office looked exactly as she'd left it. Laptop still open, coffee cup still half full, papers scattered across the conference table. She'd been gone less than 48 hours, but it felt like months. Kayla was waiting for her, along with a handful of department heads who'd stayed loyal through the chaos. They stood when she entered, and Serena saw something in their faces she hadn't expected. Respect. Not the obligatory deference employees showed their boss, but genuine respect earned through crisis. "Welcome back," Kayla said. "Good to be back." Serena set her bag down and looked at the assembled group. "I know the last few days have been hard. I know you've had questions, concerns, doubts about whether this company would survive. I want you to know we're going to be okay. Garrison's investment is back, the investigation has cleared us, and we're moving forward." "What about the operations team?" someone asked. We're down 3 senior staff and a director. We're rebuilding. I'm bringing in Ethan Rowe as our new systems advisor. He'll help us implement better oversight protocols and identify vulnerabilities before they become problems. And I'm promoting from within, people who've proven they can be trusted. What about Derek? Serena had been dreading that question. Derek made mistakes. Serious mistakes. But he also helped us expose the network and cooperate with the investigation. I'm reinstating him on probationary status for 6 months. After that, we'll evaluate whether he stays or goes. It's not forgiveness. It's a chance to prove he's learned from this. The room absorbed that in silence. Then someone started clapping. Others joined. Within seconds, the entire group was applauding, not for Derek, but for Serena, for the decision to show mercy alongside justice. She'd expected resistance. She'd expected anger. Instead, she got support. The meeting lasted another hour, covering logistics and timelines, and the 1,000 small decisions required to keep a company running. When it ended, Serena stayed in her office and stared at the city beyond her windows. 8 years ago, she'd started Veilcore with nothing but determination and a chip on her shoulder. She'd built it into something real, something that mattered, something that employed hundreds of people and moved millions of dollars of critical cargo every day. And she'd almost lost it because she'd trusted the wrong people. But she hadn't lost it. She'd fought for it. And in fighting, she'd learned something her parents never had the chance to learn. You could build something and still be vulnerable. You could be successful and still be betrayed. You could do everything right and still watch it fall apart. But if you refused to give up, if you kept fighting even when the odds looked impossible, you could survive. You could rebuild. You could prove that you were more than your worst moment. Her phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Emma wants to meet you. Says anyone who gives her dad a real job deserves cookies. You free tomorrow? Serena smiled and typed back. I'm free. Tell her I like chocolate chip. She set the phone down and turned back to her laptop. There was work to do, statements to draft, emails to answer, plans to finalize. The kind of work that used to feel like a burden, but now felt like purpose. Because she wasn't just rebuilding a company, she was rebuilding trust. In her systems, in her people, in herself. 2 weeks later, Serena sat in a conference room with the board of directors, presenting the quarterly report. The numbers were better than expected. Garrison's investment had stabilized operations, new clients were signing on to replace the ones who'd left, and employee morale was recovering. What about the fraud losses? One board member asked. Have we recovered any of the stolen funds? Partially. The DA's office has frozen Marcus's offshore accounts and is working with international authorities to repatriate the money. We expect to recover about 60% over the next year. And the rest? Written off as a loss. We're absorbing it rather than pursuing litigation that could drag on for years. The board approved the report unanimously. After the meeting, the chairman pulled Serena aside. You handled this well, he said. A lot of CEOs would have panicked, covered it up, or blamed everyone else. You did the opposite. That takes courage. Or stubbornness. Courage and stubbornness look the same from the outside. He smiled. You've got my full support going forward, whatever you need. Serena thanked him and left the building, stepping out into afternoon sunlight that felt warmer than it had any right to in October. Ethan was waiting in his car at the curb, not as a rideshare driver this time, but as someone who'd been invited. How'd it go? He asked as she climbed in. Better than expected. The board's happy, the investors are satisfied, and I didn't have to resign in disgrace. I'll call that a win. Sounds like more than a win. Maybe. She buckled her seatbelt. Where's Emma? At home with chocolate chip cookies and very high expectations about who you are. No pressure then. They drove to Ethan's house, where a 9-year-old girl with her father's eyes and a smile that could power a small city was waiting on the front porch. She ran to the car before Ethan had fully parked. You're Serena, Emma announced. I am, and you must be Emma. Dad says you're a billionaire who almost lost everything but fought back and won. Is that true? That's mostly true. Cool. I made cookies. Come on. She grabbed Serena's hand and dragged her toward the house, chattering about school and basketball and a science project involving volcanoes. Ethan followed, shaking his head with the resigned affection of a parent who'd long ago accepted being upstaged by his daughter. Inside, the kitchen table was covered with cookies, some perfectly round, others misshapen but charming. Emma insisted Serena try 3 different varieties while explaining her ranking system based on chocolate-to-dough ratio. "These are excellent," Serena said honestly. "I know. Dad says I should open a bakery, but I want to be an engineer instead. You can't build bridges with cookies." "That's true, but you can make people happy with them." "People are already happy. Bridges are useful." Serena laughed, and for the first time in weeks it felt genuine. Not the polished laugh she used in business meetings, but the kind that came from actually enjoying a moment without calculating its value. She stayed for dinner, pasta that Ethan cooked while Emma told elaborate stories about her classmates. She stayed through dessert, through Emma's insistence on showing her the science project set up in the garage, through the comfortable chaos of a household that ran on routines instead of schedules. When it was time to leave, Emma hugged her goodbye with the unself-conscious affection of someone who hadn't yet learned to guard herself against the world. "You should come back," Emma said. "Dad's less boring when you're here." "I heard that," Ethan called from the kitchen. "You were supposed to." Emma grinned and ran off to start her homework. Ethan walked Serena to her car. The evening was cool, the sky turning purple at the edges. "Thank you," Serena said. "For dinner, for everything. For reminding me that there's more to life than quarterly reports." Emma did most of the reminding. "I just provided the pasta. You provided more than that. You gave me perspective when I needed it most. You saw a problem no one else noticed and helped me fix it. You didn't have to do any of that?" "Yeah, I did, because I've been where you were, and I know what it's like to need help that doesn't come. If I could be that help for someone else, why wouldn't I?" Serena looked at him. This man who'd been a stranger 5 days ago and was now someone she trusted more than people she'd known for years. "I meant what I said about the job," she told him. "It's yours as long as you want it. No strings, no obligations, just honest work for honest pay." "I know, and I meant what I said about taking it. Emma's thrilled I don't have to drive strangers around anymore. Says it makes me less of a chauffeur and more of a consultant." "Smart." "She is. Gets it from her mother." They stood in the driveway, the comfortable silence of people who'd been through something together and come out the other side. "What happens now?" Ethan asked. "Now I go back to running a company, building something that lasts, trying not to screw it up again." "You didn't screw it up. Someone else did." "I hired them. I trusted them. That's on me." "You also caught them. That's on you too." Serena smiled. "Fair point." She got in her car and drove home through streets that felt less hostile than they had a week ago. The city lights spread across the darkness like possibilities instead of threats. Her phone buzzed with a final message for the day. "Derek, thank you for the second chance. I won't waste it." She didn't respond. Words were cheap. Actions would prove whether Derek meant what he said. But she'd given him the opportunity to prove it, and that was enough. 6 months later, Vailcore had rebuilt its operations team, implemented new oversight protocols, and expanded into 3 new markets. Garrison Capital's investment had paid off exactly as projected. The fraud investigation had concluded with Marcus Chen sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, Rachel Yun receiving probation in exchange for testimony, and James Kowalski pleading guilty to lesser charges. Amanda Price had fought the case and lost, facing 5 years. Derek Sloan had completed his probationary period and accepted a voluntary demotion to senior financial analyst. He'd never be CFO again, but he was proving himself competent and trustworthy in his reduced role. Ethan Rowe had become indispensable, catching 3 potential system vulnerabilities before they became problems, and designing protocols that other logistics companies were already trying to copy. And Serena Vale had learned something her parents never taught her. Success wasn't about being invulnerable. It was about surviving the wounds and choosing to keep fighting anyway. She sat in her office on a Tuesday afternoon, reviewing proposals for a new cold storage facility in Portland, when Ethan called. "Got a minute?" he asked. "For you?" "Always." "Emma's science fair is Thursday. She's presenting the volcano project. Wanted to know if you'd come." "I'm not family." "You're close enough." She specifically asked. Serena looked at her calendar. Thursday was packed. 3 meetings, a conference call with investors, a working lunch with the logistics team, the kind of day that used to define her entire existence. "What time?" she asked. 6 o'clock? "I'll be there." Because that was the other thing she'd learned. The company she'd built to prove she mattered had almost destroyed her. But the people who'd helped her save it, the ones who'd shown up without obligation and stayed without agenda, they'd reminded her what actually mattered. Not the quarterly reports, not the investment deals, not the empire she'd constructed to prove she was more than disposable. The people. The connections. The moments that didn't appear on spreadsheets but made everything else worthwhile. Thursday evening, Serena stood in a middle school gymnasium watching a 9-year-old girl explain volcanic eruptions to a panel of judges who were clearly charmed. Emma spotted her in the crowd and grinned, and Serena grinned back. Ethan stood beside her, arms folded, pride radiating off him in waves. "She's going to win," Serena whispered. "Probably. She's been practicing for weeks. Wonder where she gets the work ethic." Her mother. Definitely her mother. They watched Emma answer questions with confidence and precision, watched her volcano erupt right on cue, watched her accept a first-place ribbon with the kind of joy that had nothing to do with money or power or proving anything to anyone. After the fair ended, they went for ice cream, Emma's choice, not negotiable. She ordered something with 5 toppings and spent 20 minutes explaining why her volcano was scientifically superior to everyone else's. Serena sat across from them in a booth that had seen better decades and ate mint chocolate chip while listening to a child deconstruct the flaws in her classmates' methodology. And she realized something. This, right here, right now, was what success actually looked like. Not the billions in her bank account or the company bearing her name, not the investment deals or the awards or the magazine covers. This. The people who showed up, the trust rebuilt, the second chances given and earned, the ordinary moments that reminded you why fighting was worth it. She'd spent 8 years building an empire to prove she wasn't disposable. But the real proof was sitting across from her, eating ice cream and talking about science, reminding her that value wasn't measured in dollars or market share. It was measured in connections, in loyalty, in the willingness to see someone struggling and choose to help instead of looking away. Serena had built Veilcore to prove she mattered. But in almost losing it, she'd discovered that she'd always mattered. Not because of what she built, but because of who she was when everything fell apart. And that was a lesson worth more than any investment deal. Emma looked up from her ice cream, volcano ribbon still pinned to her shirt. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You look sad." "I'm not sad," Serena said. "I'm grateful." "For what?" "For being here. For knowing you. For getting a second chance when I didn't deserve one." Emma considered this with the seriousness of someone who'd just won a science fair. Everyone deserves second chances. That's what makes people different from volcanoes. Volcanoes just explode. People get to try again. Ethan laughed. "When did you get so wise?" "I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention." They finished their ice cream and drove home through streets that felt familiar now, comfortable. Serena sat in the back seat, passenger, not client, and watched the city lights blur past. She'd started this journey in the back of a rideshare car, watching her empire crumble and meeting a stranger who'd ended up saving everything. She was ending it in the same car, driven by someone who wasn't a stranger anymore. Someone who'd become a friend, a colleague, a reminder that the people you overlook are sometimes the ones who matter most. When they dropped her at her building, Emma insisted on one more hug. "See you next week?" the girl asked. "Definitely." "Good. Dad's making tacos and you have to come. It's a rule now." "I wouldn't miss it." Serena watched them drive away, then went inside to her apartment that still looked like a showroom but felt less empty than it used to. She had work tomorrow. Meetings to run, decisions to make, a company to lead. But tonight, she was just someone who'd survived something hard and come out the other side with scars and wisdom and people who cared whether she showed up for tacos. And that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.